The film begins with the protagonist, Olivia, working on her sketches and designs all night long. The next day, she arrives at the office and starts making preparations for her meeting. She sets up everything for the presentation just as her boss, Sabrina, and the client walk in. She explains her design for the living room interiors to the client, who seems unimpressed, and asks her about adding her heirloom pillows. Olivia explains that the design she was working with was more suited to a simpler design, so she ditched them. The client further questions her about what would set the room apart, and Olivia does not have a clear answer for it. The client requests to speak to Sabrina alone. After their conversation, Sabrina calls Olivia and sits her down. She explains that though she believes in Olivia's talent and wants her to succeed, she realizes that Olivia needs to find her signature style, something that sets her design apart from everybody else's. She fires her. Olivia is in shock. She gets home and her roommate, Paula, asks her about being home so early, so she shares the news with her. She picks up a card from the coffee table, an invite for her father's 25th business anniversary party. She informs Paula that as she now has the time, she is going to visit home. She arrives at her father's company, the Wilson Movers office. She meets one of the movers, Scott, and introduces herself as Neil Wilson's daughter. As they exchange pleasantries, two more from her father's team, Pete and Craig, walk out and are surprised and happy to see her. She walks inside to find her father, Neil, who is overjoyed to see her. He promises to cook lasagna for her at home for dinner. After work, Pete meets up with his friend Karen at a pie shop and helps her create a dating profile online. Olivia shares a cozy dinner with her father and tells him she wants to stay for a bit of time. He is very happy to have her. He mentions how proud he is of her multiple times, making it difficult for her to tell him that she lost her job. She offers to help him at work, and he accepts happily. Later, when she retires for the night, she looks at her mom's picture and a handwritten card she had from her. Just then, Paula calls asking if she's okay. Olivia explains that she couldn't tell her father as she didn't want to burden him, but her father overhears the conversation, as he is just outside the door. The next day, Olivia goes to the office. The others inform her that Neil is out, as he has a meeting, and they are leaving for a moving assignment. She assumed that she would work at the office with the paperwork, but Scott hands her a t-shirt and asks her to join them for the move. They visit the first place. Scott and others explain to her how to go about it. Being an organization enthusiast, she goes about it with precision, but is guided by others to work more efficiently than precisely. After a while, she gets the hang of it and starts enjoying the process with the others. They finish up one place and start moving to the next one, which Scott reveals to be his grandmother's place. They get there, but his grandmother tells Scott that she changed her mind and does not wish to move. Scott tries to convince her that the care home community which he has found will be good for her, while the others wait in the next room. His grandmother reminds him that she spent the last 50 years of her life in that house, and that it holds memories from his father's childhood to her entire life with his grandfather. She tells him she is not ready to move out yet. Scott comforts her, and they all leave together. On the other side of town, Neil is meeting with a person at his biggest competitor, Acme. When Neil arrives at the Acme office, he is taken to Robert Fuller's cabin. Robert tries to convince Neil by first congratulating and flattering him on his company's success, and when Neil asks the purpose of the meeting, he explains that he wants to buy out Neil's company. He cites the tough market for small companies and offers a generous deal to Neil. Neil politely declines the offer and invites Robert to his 25th work anniversary party. At the party, everyone celebrates Neil and Wilson family movers. Pete and Karen come together and start checking out the crowd for potential dates. While they are conversing about it, they decide to set each other up with their friends in a sort of double date scenario. Roberts comes to the party and seeks Neil out, trying to resume the conversation about buying Wilson family movers, but Neil brushes him off and walks away, suggesting he should just enjoy the party. Olivia is happy to see Karen, who is a childhood friend to her just like Pete. They catch up about their time together during school. Just then, Olivia is waylaid by a family friend, Midge, who asks her very personal questions. She manages to get away from her and goes looking for her father. She finds him on the other side, sitting alone at a table. When Olivia joins him, he asks her if she wants to share something with him, giving her a hint to tell him about getting fired. She pretends there is nothing, and asks him in turn. He tells her about his meeting with Robert and his offer. Olivia is concerned, and asks him if he is thinking of selling. Neil vehemently denies it, saying it's the only thing he still has of her mother, and he would never sell it, but the business is in trouble because of Acme. Olivia offers to help. He decides to hand her the admin responsibilities while he is on his trip with friends. He explains to Olivia that Scott will handle the moves while she can handle the office. Later, Craig calls up Neil to give a speech. Neil thanks everyone for supporting him and his business for 25 years. Scott introduces Olivia to his girlfriend, Heather. Olivia is surprised, as she was not aware he had a girlfriend. Later, he and Heather walk back to the car. Heather is excited that Neil has entrusted him with handling the business while he is on his fishing trip. Scott tries to talk to her about his actual dream, and that he does not wish to move furniture for the rest of his life, but Heather railroads him and goes on about how he will be a business owner, and it would be perfect for their future. Scott does not say anything, but is clearly upset. Later, Olivia speaks to Paula and shares the news of her being in charge of the business along with Scott. The next day, Olivia goes to the office with Neil. Neil informs the team about Olivia being in charge. Pete is a bit upset about it, but does not say anything. Neil informs Olivia about the upcoming tax audit, and asks her to make preparations for it. On the other side, Robert is speaking to his boss. They discuss Neil's disinterest in the deal. Robert argues with his boss, who thinks that Robert didn't try to convince Neil enough. He promises to get back to him with a possible helpful contact. Olivia steps out onto the shop floor to find Scott alone at his desk. She inquires about Pete and Craig. Scott informs her that, as they had no move assignments, they left early, and suggests she should rest too. But being a workaholic, she starts organizing the office. Scott watches as she hauls 2 large bags worth of trash alone. He walks up to her and offers to help, but she declines. She, on the other hand, suggests that he should leave early too, as there are no moves for that day, and she likes working alone. On the other side of town, Karen and Pete meet at the pie shop and discuss their respective date options for each other. Back at the office, Olivia is in a full groove cleaning everybody's desks. As Olivia cleans Scott's desk, she finds his LSAT scores and is impressed by them. On her father's side, she finds pictures of him with a woman she does not recognize. She worries about it as she clears the other stuff. On his trip, Neil is not fishing with his guy friends like he told Olivia, but rather, he is with the woman he has been dating for 6 months, Georgia. She hints at him trying to avoid having her meet Olivia, but Neil tells her he would love for them to meet. But the timing is not right, as Olivia is not doing fine. He shares about him overhearing Olivia's phone call, and about her being fired. Georgia immediately understands, and tells him he can take his time to tell her about their relationship. As he gets off early, Scott goes to eat lunch with Heather. He tries telling her about wanting to study law, do something else. She cites his track record at leaving things halfway, and suggests that he should try to get a job at Acme instead. The next day Scott enters the office, and is instantly impressed by the floral smell in the air. Olivia explains that floral scent helps increase efficiency. He just nods and walks to his desk. Pete and Craig arrive and compliment Olivia on cleaning up the office. They say it looks like a picture. She asks if they think it looks like a textbook design, and they agree. She gets upset, as that reminds her of her boss's comments about how her work was not unique. Unaware that their comments have upset Olivia, the others go around happily until they reach their desks. Then they're taken aback, because Olivia tidied up so well. And not only that, she also threw away the stuff she thought was useless without consulting them. They get annoyed with her for invading their space and looking through their stuff. Olivia is offended and walks away. Later, Scott goes looking for her and finds her hiding in one of the moving trucks. She shares with him how she hid out in trucks every time she got upset when she was a child. She even shares how each truck is named, and that one of the names was Kitty, because as a kid she wanted a cat, but Neil suggested she could have a truck instead. He smiles at her sweet story and encourages her to go back to the office to face the others. She reveals that what upset her is that the organization left the place looking cold and sterile without any heart. In talking about her disappointment, she lets slip that she was fired from her job because her boss thought that she lacks original thought. She realizes her mistake and makes Scott promise not to tell anyone about it, as she hasn't even told Neil yet. They form a sort of friendship after that. Later for dinner, Pete and Karen bring over their friends for a double date. But during the date, things start going south when, instead of bonding with Neil and Karen, their respective dates start bonding with each other. They end up leaving together, while Karen and Pete are stuck behind. Robert gets a call from his boss. He gives him a list of home closures, based on which he explains that Robert could contact them and offer them a discount personally. Robert gets excited, as this will take away most of the business from Wilson's. At the same time, at the Wilson family mover's office, Olivia fidgets and organizes and generally wastes time, waiting for someone to call to book a moving service. Even Craig, Scott, and Pete lays around, as there is no work to do. Just then, Olivia gets a call. She picks it up excitedly, but is disappointed to get another cancellation, and the client even explains that Acme gave them a discount. Olivia calls her father to discuss the cancellations. At his wit's end, Neil asks for her help. He says he is running out of ideas, and would welcome any way to save the business. Olivia tells him she may have an idea. Neil shares his troubles with Georgia, who suggests to him that he should let it go and be happy if the company is giving him so much stress, as that is what his ex-wife would have wanted for him too. Meanwhile, Olivia rushes back to the shop floor where Craig, Scott, and Pete are hanging around. She starts going over the problems with them, stating the fact that they have no new bookings, and most of the old ones have been cancelled. So, the only option left is to try a new strategy. She gets them to agree to use the free time to work drills to improve the efficiency and quality of their work. She runs them ragged, timing their packing skills, and running drills all day. Scott gets angry and confronts her about it. Then they get into an argument and shout at each other. Olivia, in her anger, calls him out as a coward for not using his LSAT scores, and he in turn calls her bossy and mean, and also suggests that her attitude got her fired. Pete meets Karen at the pie shop and shares with her his frustration at not being considered by Neil to run the place. Karen motivates him to do his job well, and Neil will notice his hard work. He asks her to go to a movie, but she declines, citing she has a date. Pete is taken aback, but pretends to be fine about it. On the other side, Scott vents to Heather about Olivia being inflexible and demanding. She tells him that he should not worry about any of that, and that he has a decent job. That should be enough. He gets upset and reveals that he is applying to law school. She is shocked by his decision, as it does not align with her plans, and Scott reminds her that he kept telling her that he wanted something different, while she insisted otherwise. They both realize they are looking for different things in life, and decide to break up. The next day at Acme's office, Robert is once again on a call with his boss. He shares the happy news that they have successfully taken over most of Wilson's business. Olivia wakes up late, only to realize she has a move scheduled for the day. She rushes to the office in her pajamas. The move scheduled for the day is Scott's grandma. The other waits outside as Scott goes in to convince his grandmother. He walks out after some time to inform them she is not ready yet, but he plans to take her to the care home, so she can at least take a look. While Craig and Pete leave, Olivia offers to accompany them, and suggests they could drive down there in her car. At the care home, his grandmother complains about it being too shabby, and taunts him for getting her out of the comfortable and relatable atmosphere of her home. They walk into her room, and Scott starts talking to her about getting her new stuff and refurbishing the room to make her more comfortable. Olivia interrupts him and suggests that if she does not wish to keep her old stuff, they could also get the most important stuff from her home and use it to decorate her room. His grandmother immediately gets more interested, and starts asking questions as to how they will manage to do that. Olivia asks her about the things that are important to her. She says her family pictures, and some furniture belonging to her grandfather and grandmother. They discuss the rooms and furniture placements. Later, Scott apologizes to Olivia for the previous day's incident. She also apologizes for her comments, but he interrupts her and shares that he has had the LSAT scores for a while, but never dared to apply. He invites her to meet up with him and the others at the tavern that night. Olivia agrees to come. They are back to being friends. Later, they move his grandmother to the care home. She is very happy and emotional at seeing how Olivia has decorated the rooms with all her old family stuff. She hugs her. At night at the tavern, Scott and Olivia talk about how happy he is that they could help his grandmother. Olivia asks him about Heather, and Scott informs her they broke up. Karen walks in with a guy, Jesse, on the date she had earlier. Pete is upset at seeing her with him. Back at the office, Scott comes up with an idea. He explains that Olivia's designer abilities could work to their advantage. Like how she redesigned his grandmother's old stuff into the new place, she could offer that with every move. They all get excited about the idea. Pete volunteers Karen as someone with knowledge of fabrics, and who would be willing to join them. The idea starts coming to life as they all gear up for it, calling it helping people in, more than moving out, but rather moving forward in life. As they start working, everyone gets very enthusiastic about it. They distribute flyers and meet with people, selling their services. Robert comes across one of their flyers and is surprised. The Wilson family movers calendar is suddenly full. They have new clients. Olivia sends her new portfolio to Sabrina. Robert, on the other side, fights with his boss. He comes down to the workshop and offers his services to Wilson's instead. Olivia and Scott are shocked, but decide to hire him. Later, as she and Pete sit together, Pete shares his future dream with her. He tells her that he wants to run the place with his wife and kids, a family business. Olivia is pleasantly surprised to hear that, and promises to speak to Neil about it. She teases him about Karen, but he denies having any feelings for her. She walks away amused, but Pete is left thinking. Olivia gets a call from Sabrina, who saw her new portfolio. Sabrina calls her new work inspired, and offers her a possible redesign of a restaurant. Niels comes home with Georgia in tow. He introduces her to Olivia, but before he can properly do that, Olivia realizes his fishing trip was a trip with Georgia, and he lied to Olivia about it. She is hurt and upset, and walks away. Pete meets an upset Karen at the pie shop. She informs him about breaking up with Jesse. Pete comforts her, and finally confesses his feelings to her and asks her out. She is overjoyed at the beginning, but then gets worried about losing him as a friend. Pete promises her that would never happen. They kiss. Olivia drives down to the office, looking to hide in the truck, but finds Scott there. He takes her out to the woods by the lake. He reminds her she should be happy for her father. Just then, Neil drives up to the lake. At home, they talk, and she apologizes. He reveals that he knew about her losing her job. He tells her that just because he found Georgia does not mean he stopped loving her mom. She reveals that she did not share her trouble with him as she did not wish to disappoint him. They both make a pact to be more open and not keep secrets from each other in the future. The next day, at the success party, Olivia apologizes to Georgia for the previous day. They talk some more and hug each other as Neil watches happily. Neil speaks to Pete and Karen about being ready to take over the business and start handling things. They promise to do their best. Later, as they all stand around talking, Olivia inquires about Scott. Pete informs her that he went to meet his grandmother. He invites her to the tavern later that night. She arrives at the tavern and seeks out Scott, but finds him hugging Heather, so leaves quietly. Later the same night, Scott goes looking for Olivia back at her home, but finds Georgia and Neil alone. They tell him she left for New York already. Olivia goes back to New York and meets with Sabrina. Things start working out great for her professionally. Paula reminds her of the reason for her finding all this success is Scott, as he helped her discover herself, and in turn, helped her become a better designer. She suggests that Olivia should invite him to the restaurant's opening. But Olivia is unsure. Karen and Pete run Wilson Movers together successfully. Scott is still working there. Paula sends him an invite to the restaurant opening on Olivia's behalf, without informing her. Scott finds the invite in his pile of mail, and is happy to see it. Later, he finally sends in his application to the New York Law School. On the day of the opening, Sabrina invites Olivia to give a speech. Olivia explains her reasoning and vision behind creating the restaurant designed to resemble a living room. As she explains, she brings forth the family, legacy, and memory associated with the old restaurant and the new one, displaying how she has completely changed, as a person and as a designer. Just as she is explaining how the living room is like a home away from home, she finds Scott in the gathered crowd. She finishes her speech and meets him. He applauds her speech and her design. They start talking. Scott shares his big news, being accepted into the New York Law Academy, and tells her he is looking for a place. She is overjoyed to hear his news. He asks her why she never said goodbye, and Olivia is surprised by this, and tells him about visiting the tavern to meet him, but she saw him with Heather. Scott rushes into reassuring her, and explaining how he was only greeting her, as she was there with her family. They both look relieved and happy, realizing that they both feel something for each other. Just then, Sabrina calls Olivia. Scott waves her away and steps outside to wait for her in the gardens. Olivia joins him there after a bit. She walks to him and tells him that she missed him since moving back. He shares that he missed her too, and walks forward to take her into his arms as they kiss.